Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Is the husband's friend a friend of the wife as well or not? Today's first installment will explore this question. Enjoy the show! As I drive across the manicured lawns and past the majestic monuments, the first thought that comes to mind is how similar this cemetery is to the golf club in our city. Of course, the golf club is 3 miles in the opposite direction, but they may have been designed by the same person. How strange it is to be here again, in the city where I grew up and lived most of my life. For the first time in 8 years, I always thought that I would live here all my life and eventually die here, but that was not meant to be. Probably the strangest thing about coming back is the circumstances under which I returned. I'm here for the funeral of a man who was like a brother to me for most of my life. When we were kids, there were 4 of us, and we were called the Musketeers because we were always together. The rule 1 for all and all for one was valid for us, like the Musketeers. If someone tried to hurt us, they had to deal with all of us. Now, of the 4 of us, I am the only one left who is not crippled or dead. This is truly amazing considering that we are all the same age, and none of us are under 40. I probably wouldn't have come to this funeral if Jeff's mother hadn't gotten my number from mutual friends and begged me to come and say a few words. I'm not sure what it will be like to meet some of my old friends and people I knew when I lived here. I doubt how they will treat me, but all my doubts disappear when a hand touches mine on the gear shift. I take my eyes off the road for a moment and see a smile appear on my wife's face. Her smile is contagious, and I can't help but smile back. Feels strange coming home after all these years, doesn't it? I ask. She nods and smiles again. Before she can put her thoughts into words, we both hear the wisdom of the ages from the small back seat of my Mustang. This is not a house, Dad, this is some other place. But there is beautiful grass here. Can I play on this grass? Asks my 5-year-old daughter. I park behind the line of cars and see that although we arrived early, there are already several people here. It's strange, but you expect there to be a lot more people here. After all, Jeff lived here his whole life. You'd think everyone would come to say goodbye to him. Since Jeff started out as a doctor, you would expect there would be a lot of people here to acknowledge all the good he did, but his last years were probably not associated with medical practice. I wonder what he did after he got out of prison. I get out of the car and walk around to open the door for my wife, Amanda, and my daughter, Amy. I feel a slight tingling on the back of my neck as my hair stands on end. I look up and notice that most of the people in the small crowd are looking at us. Amanda grew up here too. She left town right after her first 2 years of college. Our marriage, in a sense, is the second for both of us. We both take Amy's hands and walk toward the crowd. As I approach, Reverend Brady begins to introduce me. It almost seems like they were waiting for me. I walk up to the small podium they've built for Jeff's funeral and start talking. I'm discussing the tragedy of losing life and emphasizing the importance of holding on to the ones you love because we never know when they will be taken from us. I talk about the value of living a full life because, again, we never know how much time we have left. Then I step off the podium to generous applause, a few puzzled faces, and a couple of open-mouth expressions. The 2 who seem shocked are the people I know best. One of them, Bert, is the only one of the Musketeers besides me who is still alive. He leans heavily on a cane, and one of his legs is badly twisted. The hand holding the cane appears larger than the other, his left arm has almost no function, and the muscles have atrophied. He also has difficulty breathing, which I know is due to several broken ribs, preventing his chest from expanding and contracting fully. He looks at me, and it is difficult for me to understand the emotions behind his gaze. The other person who seems shocked is a woman. She looks much older than she should, especially considering we're the same age. Her complexion and gaze suggest a long history of alcohol abuse. Her mouth is open, and she looks at me as if she is begging me to notice her. She is slightly bent at the waist, and her skin is ruddy. She is thicker than I remember in the torso, but her limbs seem thin. She looks at me, trying to decide whether to approach or not, and then 2 women appear in my life. Amanda steps between me and the other woman, as if to tell her that to get to me, she will have to go through her first. Then my daughter's voice comes in with the volume that only 5-year-olds have. Dad, is this a witch? She's an evil witch like in my books. She looks like a witch. Another voice, this time much older and still filled with love, comes from the other side. "Liam, you spoke so well," she says. I look and see it's Jeff's mom. "You're not leaving so soon, are you? After the ceremony, we'll have a get-together at the house. You haven't been in town since you left. Don't you want to say goodbye to Jeff before I can't say this." She begins to cry. I embrace the woman who, besides my own mother, raised me the most. I hug her, squeezing gently to let her know that I am here with her and that I feel her pain. Her husband, who is also very upset, comes over to replace me. Another woman, young, looks me straight in the eye. "Well played, Liam," she grins. "I notice, if no one else did, how you played. Your words were very beautiful and inspiring, but they were also very general. You didn't say one damn word about Jeff himself, did you? That didn't sound at all like the words of someone who was close to Jeff, like a brother. You grew up together and took care of each other for most of your lives. I expected something more personal, unless, if only." What I asked, Paula said, was Jeff's ex-wife and the mother of his 2 children. "Unless you hated him as much as I did." She chuckled. "But it doesn't matter, it seems like everything worked out well for you in the end, and it ended the way it should have from the beginning." She waved at Amanda and turned to leave. Before she left, she threw one last jab over her shoulder. "No matter what his mom says, don't go look at the body. He looks nothing like his old self. His life has been hell for the last 8 years, and that's what he looks like. If you're anything like me, you won't be able to resist the temptation to spit on his face because he deserves it." Paula's speech gave Bert time to get to me. "Liam," he cried. "Bert! You look good." I give him a curt nod. "How long will you be in town?" he asks. "Not for long," I answered. "Do you think I can talk to you before you leave? There is something that I need to get off my chest, and there probably won't be another opportunity. You will no doubt be the last of the musketeers to survive. If you come again in 8 years, I will no longer be here," he said. "I'm going to take Mandy and my daughter to my parents," I said. "They haven't seen her since they came to Chicago for Christmas." "Where do you want to meet?" "At Mulligan's," he said. "Thank you." I simply nodded again. The woman whom my daughter mistook for a witch listened to the entire conversation. She turned to leave, giving me another long look. I'm sure she will be there too. She'll probably also want to tell me something without Amanda there. I return to my wife and child and head back to my Mustang. I'm denying myself the chance to say goodbye to Jeff, and as his ex-wife said, the chance to release any fluids onto his body. Less than an hour later, I'm sitting at the table at Mulligan's that we always sat at when we went out with friends. Old man Mulligan still runs the place, although his sons seem to have taken over. He tells me that out of the 4 of us, I'm the only one who hasn't changed, and I smile as I wait for Bert to join me. I remember the events of 8 years ago when our lifelong friendship ended, and with it, my innocence. In fact, I remember it like it was yesterday. Even though I didn't seem to be affected much, it changed me on a fundamental level. I have been going to therapy for years, but honestly, it was Amanda who helped me get through it with my soul intact. Amanda ran away from her first husband, and we built our life together. Well, let's start with how it all fell apart. My name is William Bennett. I grew up with 3 friends in Dunbridge, Indiana. Dunbridge is a medium-sized town. We have most of the amenities of big cities. It just takes a little longer to get them. My 3 best friends, Jeff Martin, Bert Lincoln, and Greg Pironi, ruled the world. We were all married, we all had our own homes, and we all had great jobs or careers. Jeff was a doctor, Greg was a lawyer, Bert was a teacher, and I was an engineer. We all met regularly at parties and barbecues at each other's houses. Of course, the guys also played bowling, cards, and golf together. Bert was the best golfer among us. He won the country club tournament 4 times in a row. Everyone expected him to win again this year and tie the winning record, and next year he would set a new record. He was that good. Greg was the best among us at bowling, and Jeff was the best at card games. I wasn't really the best at anything we did together. My skill lay in other areas. I was an avid runner and completed 4 marathons, including the Boston Marathon. I was never going to win the marathon, but I was the only guy I knew who could run 26 miles. I also loved my Mustangs. Since the first car I ever bought, I have never driven another car. 2 of our wives were also from Dunbridge and grew up with us. Jeff's wife, Paula, was a couple of years younger than us at school, and we all watched her grow into the woman she became. Greg met his wife, Tina, in college, and she moved to Dunbridge after their wedding. Bert's wife, Elaine, did the same when he met her at a teacher's conference. My wife, Julie, grew up with us. She was sort of the unofficial fifth musketeer. It was quite strange how she and I ended up together. I didn't really know her until after college, although she was always around. After graduation, she started communicating with us more and became part of the group. I think we were just the last ones left after the others banded together, which forced us to spend more time with each other, and we eventually got married. Julie was the light of my life. Even though it wasn't love at first sight for her, I always loved her. I think it just took her longer to realize that she loved me. I dated another girl all through high school and college, but things started to go awry when it came time to choose a major and decide what we were going to do. Our career paths were simply incompatible. No matter how much I loved her and how much I hoped she loved me, I could not come to terms with her career choice and the lifestyle it suggested. There was simply no place for me in her life. So, even though circumstances pushed Julie and me toward each other, we were determined to make it work. We had a plan, and that was it. We made a schedule for all the important things in our lives, including when to start having children. We had almost reached this point when everything collapsed. I had a habit of doing my longest run of the week every Sunday morning. This was usually a 2 to 3 hour running challenge that set the tone for the week. That Sunday, I was running around the park at a pace slow enough that I could keep it up for 20 miles or so when I came across the most incredible legs I've ever seen. They were slender but well built, with sculpted muscles. Her thighs were amazing, with a slight gap between them at the top. The 5th place these legs were attached to was delicious. I forgot about my training schedule and paced just to watch the jiggly 5th place in front of me. That amazing 5th place tapered to a tiny waist and kept going. After a few shy glances over her shoulder, the woman suddenly stopped, and I ran into her. "Liam, this is not how I wanted us to meet again," she said, and changed my world. When I finally came to my senses, I realized that I knew her. I spent the rest of the morning talking to her. If I hadn't changed my schedule to talk to Amanda, my life would probably be very different. As it was, I came home earlier. Everything in Dunbridge is quite close, so I didn't drive to the park, I ran. I walked home and entered the house ready to tell Julie about meeting my old friend, but I wasn't prepared for what I heard. I entered through the kitchen because when I was sweating and dripping, Julie would make a fuss if I was in the living room. I was not allowed to go near her furniture unless I was absolutely clean. It didn't seem right given what I was seeing now. My wife had an intimate with Greg. Jeff and Bert stood to the side, probably waiting their turn. My heart sank to my feet. They were all without anything, and it seemed like they had done this many times. I didn't know how to react. This was not something I expected. These 3 were closer to me than anyone else. We helped each other in every aspect of life. Jeff actually introduced me to Julie in the first place, and Julie loved me. I put my anger aside and took out my phone to take some pictures for the scam. "Actually, we need to talk," Julie said. "There will be time to talk later," Bert said. "No, it's serious," Julie said. The 3 guys sat on the sofa and began to listen to her. It seemed really strange that she didn't mind they were sitting on the very couch I paid for, but I couldn't get anywhere near it. "This is our last time," she said. "It's time to stop." "What the hell do you mean?" Jeff asked. "Liam got another promotion at work," Julie began. "He won't be traveling anymore, and maybe it's time to think about having a baby. I also don't want to do this to him anymore." "I've been thinking." "And that's the problem," Jeff said sharply. "You'll have to leave the thinking to those who are good at it. Liam not traveling just means we'll have to be more careful. It means we'll probably have to scrap the ending so one of us can keep an eye on Liam. I know you'll miss the 3 of us having a night, but sacrifices are inevitable." "No, that's not all," she said. "I don't want to do this to him anymore. It's wrong. Liam really loves me. It may not have started out the way we planned, but I think I'm starting to fall in love with him too. He's so kind and caring. He does everything for me. My parents even love him. I think I want to see if we can, well, you know. No, damn it, I don't. Jeff said scornfully. I was the one who convinced you to marry the idiot in the first place. You hated him. You only agreed because you didn't want to work. What did you say then? A couple of hours a week on your back is better than 40 hours a week at a desk? You called him a nerd. But after 6 years, everything changed with him, she said sharply. I just realized that out of all the guys I've ever met, he's the only one who really cares about me, and I'm not going to cheat on him anymore. I feel like a woman of easy virtue, she said. And you should, because that's what you are, Greg replied. You are not cut out to be anyone's wife. Jeff's wife belongs to Jeff, my wife belongs to me, and Bert's wife belongs to Bert. You are different, you are public property. You belong to all of us, so we share you. We even shared you with Liam. Liam was the only one of us you didn't sleep with in college. Since he got you last, he doesn't have the same rights as us. Yeah, and if you want to have a baby, go ahead, Bert said. I want it to be Liam's baby, she said. So until he gets me pregnant, no one else will get anything. Why don't you just sleep with your wives since they're so special? Let me guess, I'm the most beautiful girl you know, she smiled. Oh hell no, Greg said. The most beautiful girl we know is Liam's ex, Amanda. She had all this blonde hair, this perfect slim body, and big blue eyes. Well, my breasts are better than hers, Julie said. And didn't she become a nun? Yeah, well, she broke Liam's heart by becoming a nun, Jeff said. From what I heard, she only had him a couple of times before she went to a convent. And when it comes to breasts, my wife has the best in the city. Then why don't you sleep with her? Julie asked. Because she's Jeff said. Paul acts like she's gold-plated, it's just not worth all the trouble. So this is my 5th place, then? Julie asked. No, Bert said. My wife has the best 5th place in the state. Guys bump into everything when she walks down the street in a skirt or skinny jeans. Your 5th place isn't even close. Julie just looked at him. So I'm just the best for a night, huh? She asked. I'm just the one everyone wants to have an intimate with. No, not even that, Greg said. You're just the biggest prostitute. You'll let anyone sleep with you. It's always been like that. Hell, the only one who ever waited and met you before getting into your pants was Liam. Well, that all stops now, Julie said sharply. From now on, Liam will be the only one who gets into my pants. Period. It would have been very painful for him, Jeff said. What do you mean? Julie asked. I mean, if you stop sleeping with us, I'll have to tell poor Liam all about this, Jeff said. He'll be heartbroken, and you two will probably get divorced. You're over 30, you don't have any skills, and you've never worked. The only thing you know is to have a night. What kind of life will you have? In time, he will forgive us for being weak and letting you talk us into having intimate with you, but he will never forgive you. But it wasn't like that, said Julie. Who's he going to believe? Your 3 lifelong best friends, were you? And don't worry about him catching us, Jeff said. I'll get you some pills. They're very powerful sleeping pills. I don't have trouble sleeping, Julie said. See, they're already working, Jeff said. But seriously, you idiot, the pills are for Liam. When we need to meet, just put one in his drink and he'll sleep through the night. Now come here. Julie just looked at him. Bert, call Liam, Jeff said. Bert took out his phone. I left the house and knocked over the table by the back door. I ran across the yard and behind the garage. As soon as I saw Julie's face in the doorway a few minutes later, my phone rang. Hello? I said as if I had just arrived. Liam, honey, where are you going to finish? Julie asked. I want to make you breakfast. It's not worth it, I said. I'll probably just want something light. I hung up. An hour later, I entered the house. My supposed friends were not there. "Hi, honey," Julie said. As always, she seemed to care about me and everything that might be wrong. The difference was that now I knew it was all a lie. I just looked at her. I think deep down I wanted to see if there was any change in her. In fact, she looked exactly the same as always. The only difference was how I treated her. When she tried to sit me down and asked if I wanted her to massage my legs, I got goosebumps. "No thanks," I said. "Well, how about you sit in the bath and I'll give you a massage like always," she suggested. "Actually, I think I'll just hit the spa for a while," I replied. "Do you want me to join?" she asked. "I need to think," I said. It occurred to me while I was running that maybe I should pass on the promotion. She looked startled. "Why do you want to do this?" she asked. "We'll get more money, and we won't have to be apart as much." "Are you crazy?" I wasn't crazy, I was shocked. I needed some time to figure out how I felt about all this, so I climbed into our little two-person spa and let the bubbles wash over me. I set the temperature to the hottest I could handle and just thought. I thought about my life, or the life I thought I had. I thought about my friends, or who I thought they were for me. Eventually, I realized that I was practically alone. Apart from my parents, who I didn't want to involve in this, I didn't have anyone I could really trust. Then I started thinking about what I would like my life to be like. I wanted to end my relationship with Julie. What hurt me the most was not that I saw her with my best friends, but that she never really loved me. I gave her my heart the entire time we were together. I still couldn't believe that she never cared about me. Of course, she claimed to care now, but that was probably just a result of living with me for so many years and all the things I did for her. Perhaps the most mature thing to do would be to divorce Julie and try to start my life over. While I was at the spa, I heard my phone ringing. I let it go to voicemail while I decided my fate. Julie, I was living in a nightmare. At 31, my life was taking a path I had not planned. I was married to the most wonderful man I knew. My plan had completely failed 9 years ago when he and his friends graduated from college. I didn't really know Liam. Sure, he was attractive, probably the most attractive of the four, but he had spent the last 2 years of college depressed over his girlfriend's decision to join a monastery. I slept with the other 3 multiple times but had very little contact with Liam. Jeff actually brought us together. I had known Jeff for a while, but when he met Paula, he couldn't date me anymore. Jeff was going to medical school, and others were already getting jobs in their specialties. Most of our friends were starting out in life, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. It seemed like I would be the last one left at the party. My mom once mentioned that her friend was opening a restaurant and that I might consider working for her. Then I knew that my mother was crazy. Did she really see me on my feet all day, running here and there, serving people? My real plan was to marry Jeff until he met Paula. I knew Jeff loved big breasts. Paula's breasts were simply amazing. I couldn't believe she could stand upright, let alone walk. One of the cool things about Jeff was that he and his friends shared everything. He introduced me to other guys and didn't mind if I slept with them as long as he got his share. Jeff and I had a pretty good relationship, and I could always talk to him, so I told him about my problem. It was he who suggested that I meet his friend Liam. I later learned that Jeff had several reasons for everything he did. On the one hand, he wanted Liam to get engaged too, like the other 3. They always did everything together, so he didn't want Liam to be a carefree bachelor while the others were tied down in marriage. He was also worried about Liam. It's been 2 years since Liam broke up with Amanda, and he hasn't dated anyone. And finally, the real reason, this was the first time I heard that Jeff had an idea for the public domain. I belonged to them all, and the only way any of them could use me after our wedding without arousing suspicion was if I was married to one of them. That way, they could tell their wives they were going to see Liam. If all 8 of us continued to communicate together, no one would suspect anything. I knew it was wrong from the start, but it made my life easier. Being a wife was much easier than being a waitress. Greg even told me that the smartest thing to do would be to stay with Liam for 5 or 6 years and then divorce him. After we've been married this long, there would be a different type of public domain, the type that meant I could get child support and half his income while still doing nothing. It was a great plan. I thought about this before I called Liam on our second date. I would capture him with intim, and then after a while, I would simply start denying him night. So when the time came for divorce, I would turn it off completely. If he didn't get night from me, he probably wouldn't mind the divorce. The problem with the grand plan was Liam. He was the sweetest man I've ever met. We started out more as friends than anything else, but I soon noticed that I liked him. It took some time, but soon we became a couple. When we finally got married, I couldn't believe it. He really listened to me, and we talked about everything. We finally had a night on our honeymoon, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. He was gentle and loving. Instead of forcing me to do what he liked, he asked me what made me happy. I thought about this a lot. Even after we got married, Liam always gave me little gifts and flowers. Before I knew it, I actually started to have feelings for him. I couldn't call it love, but I really enjoyed being with him. Over time, I started doing things to try to please him, just like he did for me. I never stopped sleeping with other guys, even after I married Liam, but I didn't feel guilty about it back then. Over time, I noticed that I needed balance. For every time I had an intim with other guys, I needed to spend time with Liam. The other guys had their merits. When it came time to divorce Liam 4 years ago, Greg asked if I wanted to start the paperwork. I told him it was probably best to wait and catch Liam doing something wrong. I knew he would never do this, but I just couldn't admit to anyone that I wanted to stay married to Liam. So in the last few years, everything has become better. Over the past 6 months, I have decided that I will remain married to Liam for the rest of my life. I recently decided that I wanted a child and that it should be Liam's. I was ready to give up extramarital intimate forever and become a good wife. My goal was to throw a going-away party for the guys, tell them the bad news, and say goodbye to them. But that did not happen. Even as Liam walked through the door, I was contemplating other options when I noticed the look on his face. Something was wrong with him. At first, I thought he had pulled something or gotten injured while running. Then he started talking about turning down a promotion at work. I knew something was going on. I also had another idea that I wanted to discuss with the guys. Maybe we should stop this for a few weeks so I could stop taking the pills and let Liam get me pregnant. It all came down to one thing: the people I thought were my loved ones stole my life from me. Julie, Jeff, Bert, and Greg had to pay. I wasn't going to take this anymore. At 33, almost half of my life was wasted. They say that the average person lives about 70 years. This meant that almost half of my life was wasted on people who weren't worth it. Each of them had to pay. I had to decide exactly how and what I was going to do. This took me several days. The first thing I did was install a recorder on the home phone to gather information about what they were doing. Since Julie was always at home, she did not have a mobile phone. It had been about a week since I caught them, and I hadn't been idle. I met with several lawyers, and they all told me that divorcing Julie would likely mean that I would have to give her almost half of my assets. I didn't think she deserved it, so I was going to figure out something else for Julie, even if it meant I had to stay married to her for a while. I decided to start with Bert because he would be the easiest target. Since Bert was the one who said the least against me personally, he would receive the lightest punishment. I started asking around the city in not-so-nice places to find out where you could go if you needed someone beaten up. I was eventually directed to a couple of bars in a nearby town. A bartender in one of the bars put me in touch with a guy who said that for $500, plus $11,000 for the one who would do the beating, they would do the job. I started hanging out at this bar. I became friends with the bartender and told him I was looking for a job. We didn't exchange names, but after a week or so, he trusted me and said that if something came up, he would give me a chance. A few days later, I asked another guy to contact the bartender to find someone to work with. I know it sounds confusing, but it was necessary. I paid the bartender, who thought someone else had paid him to pay me to beat Bert up myself. That way, if someone were to investigate, there would be enough layers between me and the crime that no one would be able to link me to it. I gave my friend all the information about Bert. He handed it to the bartender and gave him the money. The bartender actually cheated me. He only gave me $750. A few nights later, I caught Bert leaving a bar he frequented. Bert wasn't drunk, so he had a chance. I put on my ski mask, and it was dark. It was a very fair fight. The next day, I received a call from Jeff. We had to go to the hospital to see Bert. What about him? I asked. He got robbed, was all Jeff said. Yeah, you're about to get robbed too, I thought. We all stood by his bed and watched as Bert tried to tell the detective about his attack. He told the detective that the guy attacked him out of nowhere and just beat him up. He was sure it was a case of mistaken identity because he had never done anything bad to anyone. He just came in for a drink after work. The guy didn't take anything and didn't try to steal his car. He didn't understand this. Maybe he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. After the police left, Bert looked at us. I told the guys I needed to go call Julie and I'd be right back. When I left the room, I stuck the tip of my shoe into the door frame, leaving the door slightly open, and began to eavesdrop. What didn't you want to talk about? Jeff asked. Bert could barely speak through the pain. There were two, he whispered. There was someone who beat me up. He seemed to enjoy the beating. He kept offering me a bat and telling me I could hit him. I just wanted him to stop. They started talking, and I heard him say something about them being hired by some brother of the girl I'm sleeping with. Both Greg and Jeff looked worried. You sleep with at least 2 women besides your wife, Jeff said. Which of them could it be? I think it's the new secretary, said Bert. I met her brother once, and he didn't like me. I didn't tell the cops because if I did, my wife might find out, and that would definitely be the end of me. I chose that moment to return to the room. Jeff and Greg noticed me and simply nodded. Do you know anything about who beat you? I asked. Bert shook his head. We can't let someone get away with this, I said angrily. We are musketeers, one for all and all against all. You mean one for all and all for one, Jeff corrected me. You know what I meant. I snapped. We need to find out who did this and make them pay for it. People need to understand that if they attack or offend any of us, there will be serious consequences. Calm down, cowboy, Greg said. We have no idea who did it or why. Like Bert said, it could be a case of mistaken identity. Damn it, I snapped. Someone has to pay. I feel like someone attacked me personally, and I want everyone involved to feel my pain one way or another. They all looked at me strangely. I'll see you on the golf course tomorrow. Oh hell, that's even worse, I said. What do you mean? Jeff asked. Well, I said, maybe there's another possibility. With all his injuries, Bert has no chance of ever breaking the record for most tournament wins in golf. I saw a single tear roll down Bert's cheek. Apparently, he forgot about his chance at inheritance. Internally, I was glad. While Greg and Jeff stayed at the hospital visiting Bert, I went about my business. I went to Jeff's clinic. I had a key to his place because every year when he went on vacation, I would pick up his mail and take deliveries. Jeff didn't want his nurse or assistant to do this because they would charge for it. Jeff was very stingy. I went into the small back room where Jeff kept paper copies of original medical forms and other patient data. The room was cool and efficient, and despite the enormous amount of paper, there was minimal risk of fire. I had several cans of gasoline, which I poured into 2 containers labeled rubbing alcohol, and placed them in one corner. I wiped down the walls and floor with gasoline. The room was well sealed, and Jeff's staff came in to add new files once a month, so I had at least 2 or 3 weeks before anyone would come here. I returned to my car and picked up the iron with the defective plug. I found a printer with exposed wires and plugged them both into an extension cord, then connected the extension cord to a timer. Jeff's office was closed on Sundays, so no one would be there tomorrow. I drew a trail of incendiary fluid from the extension cord to the canisters of alcohol and smiled. The timer was set for tomorrow morning while all 3 of us played golf. This was just the beginning of Jeff's problems, and I smiled thinking about it. Of course, the police would think it was arson. As soon as I got into the car, I connected the voice changer from Radio Shack to the burner phone I bought at the gas station today. I called Jeff's office in a loud, angry voice. What kind of doctor are you? I shouted. The voice-changing software made it deeper and almost alien. I sent my boyfriend to set fire to your office as you asked, but you didn't pay. I've never seen such a greedy doctor. If I don't have the money by tomorrow, I'll set fire to your house with you inside. I took the battery out of the phone and threw it down the drain. I drove around and threw a voice changer into a fire where homeless people were sitting around. I gave them each a couple of dollars and watched the plastic casing melt and burn until there was almost nothing left of it. Then I went home. Where have you been? Julie asked, trying to grab my hand. I gently pushed her away. I stopped by the hospital to see Bert, I said. She looked at me and then smiled, trying to hide her joy. Knowing how her brain worked, or thinking I did, I knew she was glad I came to see Bert. This meant that I was still in the dark about what was going on between Bert and the others who would visit someone he considered his wife's lover. On the other hand, she was increasingly worried about my growing coldness over the past few days. I had noticed that she had been drinking more. Perhaps this was connected not only with what was happening between us, but also due to the fact that she had turned from a voluntary woman of easy virtue into a forced one over the past few days. Plus, the fact that the guys were literally discussing her shortcomings right in front of her left her without anyone she could turn to. She couldn't talk to them because they were the ones who put her in this position. She couldn't talk to her friends because they were married to the men she slept with. And for the first time, she couldn't even talk to me, her loyal and supportive husband, who had catered to her every whim since I laid eyes on her. The pressure quickly turned her into an alcoholic, and I hoped she would drown in it. While she was preparing dinner, I made her drink even stronger. Throughout the dinner, I made sure that her glass did not remain empty. After dinner, when she came up to me and began to look at me with loving eyes, I moved away from her. "Liam, why are you pulling away from me?" she asked. There were notes of disappointment and suspicion in her voice. She twisted her tongue slightly. "It's been a few days now," she said, "and I want it now." "I told you I was having problems at work," I said. "I still haven't decided whether to accept the promotion." "I thought we settled this," she said, slurring. "You'll accept the promotion. We'll have more money and more time together, and then you'll stay home and get me pregnant. In fact, we should start this process right now." As soon as she said right now, she tried to get up and fell to the floor. "I think I'm drunk," she said and started laughing. I helped her get up and carried her to the bedroom. "That's exactly what I wanted," she said. "I've never seen Paula's breasts," I said. "Is Amanda prettier than me?" she asked. "You've seen her before, a long time ago," I said. "I saw Amanda a few days ago. She's in town visiting her family right now." This seemed to sober her up quickly, or maybe it was just a moment of clarity. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked loudly. "It didn't matter," I said. "We met by chance while I was out running on Sunday morning. We agreed to have lunch together this week to chat." "I don't think so," she said sharply. "No dinners with ex-girlfriends without my supervision." "Julie, she's a nun," I said. "It's not like anything could happen. Besides, you can't control me. You can't decide who I can or can't talk to or date. Have I ever told you what you can or can't do with your old friends?" She quickly stopped talking. Even drunk, she was afraid to open this topic for discussion. But the feeling of guilt on her face was overwhelming. "I love you, Liam," she said. "I really do. You know that, right?" I simply nodded. If she expected me to say the same thing in response, then she was in for a disappointment. "I mean, we're not like some couples," she started again. "We're not together just because we don't want to be alone, right? Why are you even asking me such a question?" I asked. "Julie, you're drunk, aren't you?" "Well, even if you did, you could still have an intim with me," she said. When I woke up the next morning, I quickly rolled over next to her. When she woke up, I pretended to be asleep. She turned to me and smiled. I opened my eyes and smiled back at her. "Last night was great, honey," I said sleepily. "Is it true?" she said questioningly. The confusion on her face was priceless. She remembered me carrying her to bed, but she didn't remember us having intimate or taking a shower. "It was really good," she lied. She said, "You're ready too. Would you like to do it again?" "Oh," I screamed, jumping up. "What happened?" she asked, sitting up. "You need to stop doing this to me. I forget about everything." I need to be on the golf course in a while. I need to get dressed and leave. I don't even have time for breakfast. I jumped out of bed and threw on my clothes. I ran to the bathroom, shaved, and brushed my teeth. I grabbed my golf clubs. I had to drive our Jeep because my clubs wouldn't fit in the trunk of the Mustang. I waved goodbye to Julie and left. I saw that she was thinking and trying to remember what happened, then I decided to increase her alcohol consumption even more. I actually arrived at the golf course before Jeff and Greg. I ate a sandwich at the club and headed to the practice range. I was almost finished when they approached me. "Hey, it's not fair to train," Greg said. "I had to," I grinned. "You guys always had more balls than me." Jeff laughed, but Greg didn't. He looked at me carefully and then smiled, but only a little. We just managed to enter the field. Since we didn't have a fourth player, we let another guy we saw at the club play with us. 6 holes later, I made an announcement. "Hey, guys," I said. "It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Why don't we play 3 more and then break for lunch before the back 9 holes?" "Sounds like a plan," Jeff said. "Since I seem to be losing anyway, maybe a break will change my luck." And so we did. We were sitting in the club, trying to decide whether to raise the bets to $1 a shot or keep them at 50 cents when one of the club employees ran up to Jeff. "Dr. Martin," she said excitedly, "you have an urgent call." "It's your wife." Jeff had a goofy smile on his face as he answered the phone. "I guess the baby can't wash her belly with those big breasts. She probably needs me to come home and lift them up." "What?" he shouted. "I'll be there now." Then he turned to us, concern written on his face. "Are you going to need help lifting those breasts?" I asked. He looked at me like I was a fool. "My clinic burned down this morning," he said sharply. "I need to go there now." "Sorry, Jeff," I said. "I was just kidding. Do you want us to come with you?" "Could you?" he asked. The 3 of us said goodbye to our new friend and headed to where Jeff's clinic once was. Paula was there, talking to the police and firefighters when we pulled up. Jeff ran up and looked around. He was beside himself with rage. He continued to look at everything around him. The pain on his face couldn't compare to what I felt when I found out what he and my other supposed friends were doing to me. But it was a good start. The emotions running across his face were priceless. I wish I could write them down in my mind and play them over and over again. Everyone has heard of the 5 stages of grief. Jeff invented 5 stages of stupidity. He went from anger to humility, to elation, to realization, to depression in seconds. Greg and I joined Jeff as the fire chief started talking to him. A faulty appliance appears to have caused a fire in a room full of paper. The fire spread to the rest of the building, he said. He looked at Jeff strangely. The fire started around 10 o'clock in the morning, according to the guy from the supermarket across the street. He was collecting carts in the store's parking lot and noticed flames in your building, said the chief fire officer. They might want to know where you were at 10 o'clock this morning. That's normal procedure. It was obviously an accident, Jeff said. Me and 2 of my best friends were playing golf, Jeff said. There was another guy playing with us, and most of the club staff can confirm that I was there. None of us left the field once we started playing around 8:30. The clinic burned to the ground. It was declared a total loss. Jeff was devastated. He was barely paying off the mortgage on the place. All of Jeff's medical equipment was relatively new, and he was still paying for it. My buddy Jeff was so greedy, that's why he was so upset. When Jeff ran up and saw that his clinic had burned to the ground, he was furious. He tried to understand who or what could have caused this. Then he accepted that it had happened and realized that he would have to make the best of it for a while. At first, he was delighted because he could improve his situation. He could overestimate the value of his equipment to the insurance company and get paid for a few pieces of equipment that he didn't use often but wouldn't replace. He would use this money to buy what he really needed, and since the clinic had to be rebuilt, he could design it better than it was. Then he realized that, although the clinic was insured, he did not have fire insurance. This made him depressed because Jeff would still have to pay for everything that was destroyed, but he would be paying out of his own pocket. Plus, he would have to find money to build a new clinic. He was already so in debt that it simply seemed impossible. By the time the fire crews left the scene, Jeff was kneeling in the wreckage, performing his best Nancy Kerrigan impersonation. "Why?" he shouted. If only Jeff had known his problems were just beginning, I think he wouldn't even have had the energy to scream. Greg shook his head, looking at me. I smiled slightly, and I saw a chill run through him. "I think it's broken," he said. "Not yet," I replied. Greg didn't say a word, his eyes widened, and he nodded his head. "See you later, Liam," he said. He got into the car and drove away. I had plans for old Greg too, but I wanted to enjoy it and connect it to the rest of Jeff's downfall. Looking back, it was a mistake, but it still worked. I decided to take care of Julie because she would be part of the rest of Jeff's destiny. I returned to where I had paid 2 homeless men to watch me burn the place down. I looked around until I found the right person. He didn't appear to be under the influence of illegal substances or alcohol, he was just unlucky. I asked him if he was willing to take the risk for a chance to start a new life. He looked at me like I was crazy and then started telling his story. "Seriously, buddy," he said, "I'm not looking for a handout, just a helping hand." I quickly moved away from him, he was not what I was looking for. The next person I approached had a permanently angry expression on his face. None of the other homeless people approached him, surprisingly, he was the only one who didn't stink. "What?" he asked when I approached him. "What do you want?" "Tell that stupid she's not getting anything." I realized that I had found the right person. After talking with him, I learned that he was not homeless, he was a completely reasonable and intelligent person. He was simply let down by the legal system and family courts to the point that he decided that instead of giving his ex a dime, he would simply stop working and become homeless. "How would you like to take revenge on a woman who is just like your ex?" I asked. "My name is Melvin, and I am at your disposal," he smiled. I made a very favorable agreement with Melvin. I'd pay him in advance after his first show, and he'd get the rest from the insurance company and lawyers. I returned home to Julie. "Have you heard about Jeff's clinic?" I asked. "What's with her?" she asked. She was already drunk, she could barely stand and spoke with difficulty. "Why are you asking me about Jeff?" "I have nothing in common with him. Do you think I like him or what?" "Julie, Jeff's clinic burned down this morning," I said. "Ah," she laughed. "That deserved it." Then she looked around the room and into my eyes. "Sorry," she said. "I forgot that he is your friend." "Liam, why don't you love me anymore?" she asked. "I have 2 theories." She took the glass and took a long sip from it, then went to our bar and grabbed a bottle. She tried to remove the lid but could not. I took the bottle from her and opened the cap. I poured 2 sleeping pills into the glass that Jeff had given me for her. "What are your theories, dear?" I asked. "Why do you call me darling?" she asked. "You don't care about me, you might as well call your car expensive. You treat her like a wife. That's how lucky I am. I fell in love with you and am ready to do anything, just when you decided that you don't need me." She fell into a chair. "Give me my damn drink," she said. "Tell me your theories first," I said. "Why do you think I don't love you?" I waited for the pills to dissolve in the glass. "I have 2 theories," she said, "and I don't remember them." I realized that she was too drunk to notice whether the pills had dissolved or not. I handed her the glass. "Oh yes," she said. "I know everything. I think you and that nun are cheating on me. I talked to people who saw you together. Julie, I told you that Amanda and I were going to lunch, remember?" I asked. "Oh yes," she said. "And I told you not to do it. I hate that. It's good that you listened to me. What's your other theory?" I asked. "Liam, I love you," she said, "but I was very bad. I think you might find out what I did and not love me anymore." "What did you do, Julie?" I asked, looking at her as if I was really listening. These pills must have been very strong because her eyes were already starting to close. "You mean you don't know?" she asked. "I'm not stupid, Liam. I won't tell you if you don't know." "Damn, that's a relief. I feel better." Let's go upstairs and do this. Or maybe. I looked at her as she tried to get up. We need marshmallows and sticks. She suddenly said, for what? Before we get into that, let's go to Jeff's burnout clinic and roast some marshmallows, she said and laughed until she collapsed back into her chair. I went down to the basement and found Melvin. I took him through the side door when I got home. Ready? I asked. He just nodded. When will your friends be ready? I asked. As soon as you get me back to the park, he said. We went out into the backyard, and I showed him Julie's car. Let's do it, I said. He nodded. This is really going to hurt, I warned him. He ran as fast as he could toward Julie's car. At the last moment, he stopped. Do it, coward. I egged him on. He looked at me angrily. Just pretend my drunk wife is your ex, and she's driving. It worked. He accelerated again and crashed into Julie's car. He hit it so hard that the airbag deployed. As he bounced off the car, he fell backward and hit his head on the ground. He had a huge bruise on his head and a mark from the car grill on his ribs. It was time to push Julie's car into the front yard and leave it on the lawn at an angle. I thought I could start it, but the devil wouldn't start. This was probably due to the deployment of the airbag. I called the police and reported Julie missing. They said I couldn't file a report until she had been gone for 24 hours. The guy's tone on the phone implied that I needed to have more control over my woman. We quickly jumped into my car, and I drove him to a nearby park where his friends were waiting. He lay down on the ground, and as if on cue, they all started screaming. As I drove away, I noticed in the rearview mirror that someone in a car had stopped to see what was going on. The man got out of the car with a cell phone. As I expected, some good Samaritan had already called the police. When I got home, I loaded the still sleeping Julie into her car. I put her in the front seat to make it look like she fell asleep at the wheel. I gently rubbed some of the chemicals from the airbag onto her face and neck. I placed an open bottle of alcohol on the seat next to her, dropping some onto her clothes. I put the keys in the ignition and went into the house to sleep. I was awakened by a loud knock on the door around 3 o'clock in the morning. The lights in my yard were flashing, and I saw not one but 2 police cars in front of my house. "Are you William Bennett?" asked the officer. "I am," I said as if I hadn't woken up yet. "Are you here to take my wife's missing person report?" "I've been waiting almost all night." I just dozed off. "Not really, sir," he said. "We put 2 and 2 together, and it worked for us." "I don't care about your math skills," I said. "I need to find Julie." "Well, we know where she is, sir," he said. "That's why we're here." "Where is she?" I asked. "Is she all right?" "Perhaps you'd better see for yourself," he said. There were at least 4 police officers standing around the car. Julie was still sleeping where I left her. She snored louder than a chainsaw, and some police officers laughed at the volume of her snoring. When I approached, the laughter stopped. "Did you bring her home?" I asked. "Why did you park her on my damn lawn?" The police looked at each other, their expressions seeming to ask who would tell a madman what his wife had done. "Sir, we didn't park her. It appears your wife missed the driveway and ended up on the lawn by herself. She also appears to be drunk," he said. I lowered my head as if I was overcome with deep shame. "She's been drinking a lot lately," I said sadly. In my head, I heard applause as if I had won an imaginary Academy Award for Best Actor. "Well, take her out and bring her into the house," I said. "Sir, there is a problem with this," the same officer said. "It appears your wife was drunk for quite some time, and she was driving the car. She also had an open bottle of alcohol in the car. Several witnesses also saw your wife hit a pedestrian and drive away from the scene. The man is now in the hospital. One of the witnesses said she laughed after she hit the man. She also rolled down her window and shouted, 'Damn you,' and then drove off. We'll probably need to arrest her. I'll hire 2 lawyers." I shouted. "One to get her out of jail and one to sue the police department. By the time this is over, I'll be the chief of police, and I'll fire you all. You'll see." "Sir, please calm down," he said. Why would you judge the police department? We were completely professional from the moment we arrived on the scene. Yes, you were, I said, but if you had found her and stopped her when I first reported her missing, none of this would have happened. I'll tell the guy she hit the same thing. Maybe we can sue you together. Where are you taking her? I asked angrily. The third section, he said, smiling. I think he thought I was drunk too. They have medical facilities for toxicology screenings and a large holding cell for drunks. I watched as they pulled Julie out of the car. Leave me alone, Liam, she muttered loudly, still slurring her words. We have a night again, a lot. Poor guy, said one of the officers. A few hours later, I got a call. Liam, it's me, Julie said. She sounded terrible. I'm in trouble, honey. You have to come and get me out of here. Where are you? I asked. I'm in jail, she said. They say I did a terrible thing. I'll be right there, I said. I called her parents and told them what she told me. I didn't give any details, just said that they should meet me there. I took the bag from the trunk of the car and placed it on our doorstep so it would be there when we returned. I arrived there around the same time as Julie's parents, and we all went in together. I learned that Julie's bail would cost us 10% of $200,000. The judge who arrested her early that morning wasn't kidding. Julie's trial was scheduled for 2 weeks from that morning, and if we didn't buy her out, she would remain in jail the entire time. Her mom and dad looked at me. I just shrugged. She's been drinking a lot lately, I said. I don't know why. We don't fight or anything. Maybe she's bored. Do you have money? Asked her father. I nodded. This will use up about half of our savings, but we can manage, I said. I will need to find her help to stop drinking. I can't believe she hit a man and drove away. It's not her, it's the alcohol, her mother said. Stop it, Martha, my father-in-law said. It wasn't a bottle of alcohol while driving a car, it was Julie. She was always a little wild before she met Liam. Maybe it's starting again. Was Julie wild? I said, as if I heard it for the first time. I'll see you later, Liam's father said, grabbing his wife's hand and leading her out of the police station. We'll come see you later. If you need anything, let us know. That told me everything I needed to know. Her parents also knew that Julie was a woman of easy virtue. They didn't want to talk about it, they were sure she was done with it. I drove Julie home, pretending I was so angry I didn't want to talk to her. She kept trying to start conversations. Liam, I'm so sorry, she said. I do not remember anything. I think they call it blackouts. You get so drunk that your mind just doesn't process anything for a while. She just looked at me. I'll make it up to you, she said. Julie, we'll have to be careful. We just spent half of our savings on your deposit. A significant portion of the remaining money will probably go to your lawyer. I'll have to work really hard to get a bigger bonus so we can have money in the bank. She just lowered her head and didn't say anything. They impounded your car and took away your license, so you will be staying home for a while, I said. Listen, honey, I really have to go to work today. I can't afford to miss many days, and I'll have to miss a few days for your trial. Can you handle it? Of course, she said. I just need to take a shower and sleep in my bed. When we arrived at the house, we got out, and Julie picked up a box that was addressed to her. I pretended not to notice. I quickly kissed her on the cheek. She tried to turn around to kiss me on the lips, but I turned too and made sure that the kiss landed on my cheek. That's not a good kiss, she said. Honey, your breath smells terrible, I replied. I left the house and went to work. On my way to work, I pulled off the freeway and stopped at another gas station that was not on my route. I bought another burner phone, which took 50 minutes. I paid cash so there would be no record of me owning the phone. I stopped at an electronics store near a gas station and bought another voice manipulator. I didn't really like this one because all the voices sounded like cartoon characters, but I was only going to use it a few times. I arrived at work and parked the Mustang in the parking lot. I activated the new burner phone and connected the voice manipulator to it. I started laughing because if it weren't for the fact that I could still pronounce words without starting them with an R, I would have sounded like Scooby-Doo. I called Julie at home and told her I was the one who sent her the package. At first, she became silent and then asked me who I was. The way she went silent let me know she had seen the video. "Listen," I barked, "you must think I'm as stupid as your husband. Why should I tell you who I am? I just need to know if you want to stay married." "Yes," she said. "Really, I do. I love my husband." "Well, those idiots could force me to continue doing this." "Well, unless you want me to send him a copy of that CD I sent you. I want you to take $440,000 out of your account and put it in your gym bag." "We don't have that much," she said. "We had to spend half the money in the account to get me out of jail." "How much can you collect?" I asked rudely. "Maybe 20 or 15, she said. I could barely restrain myself from laughing into the phone. Then my blood began to boil as she spoke again. "I don't know where you got this video from," she said. "I've seen this file format before. It's the same high-definition format that iPhones use, so either you took this video yourself, or you know someone who did. You could have gotten it from one of the men in the room. Anyway, what about the deal? I don't want to empty the account because my husband will find out, and I won't have a way to explain it if some of the money disappears. I can come up with an explanation, but if all the money disappears, he'll have to find out why. Maybe you'll agree to $10,000, and I'll give you part of what those guys got." I was shocked and even more angry. It took me a few seconds to make sure there wasn't an ounce of anger in my voice. "No," I said. "I'm not interested in intim with some old lady." "To hell with you," she spat. "I already told you no." "Stop it. Despair is not good anyway. Put the money in a coffee can, put the coffee can in a gym bag, and bring it to the park near your house. Fill the rest of the bag with old clothes or something, then leave the bag on the bench near the playground at 4 o'clock. Then leave. If everything goes well, you will never hear from me again. But if there is no money, I will leave another disc on your doorstep, only I will personally give it to your husband." I hung up and went to meet with the woman I had hired. She was a very nice older lady. She drove past the house but had not yet seen it inside. She had a few questions about why I wanted to sell the house, so I was upfront with her. I told her that my wife was cheating on me with friends from our area, and since most people in the area knew about it, I could no longer live there. No one really knew about it except the cheaters themselves and me, but I thought she would be more sympathetic if she thought I was being humiliated on a daily basis. I showed her the home's appraisal from last year, and she was confident she could get even more. I told her to start looking for buyers and that I would accept any offer within 20% of the appraised value, but time was of the essence. Even if she had to resort to short selling, I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. At 3:15, I received a notification on my cell phone about a large withdrawal from my bank account. I smiled. I called the burner number, and an angry man answered the phone. I called the homeless shelter several times, and it seemed like all those people were always angry. I asked for Melvin. Melvin responded, sounding like he was in a lot of pain. "Melvin, enough of the show," I said. "It's me. I need one of your guys to pick something up for me." At 3:50, I met Steve in front of the park where Julie was supposed to bring her bag. I gave him half of a $50 bill and showed him the other half. I also reminded him of the money he would receive once everything was settled. He walked slowly through the park and arrived there at the same time as Julie. She put her bag on the bench and slowly walked away from it. Steve picked it up and watched Julie leave, then brought the bag to me. "I was just going to take the bag and run," he said, "but Melvin said you're a good guy, and Melvin hates everyone." "Don't worry, buddy," I said. "You did the right thing." I gave him the other half of the $50 bill. "How come I did it right twice?" he asked. "First of all, if you had run away, I would have shot you," I said. Of course, I was lying. I didn't have a weapon. "And secondly," I said, pulling Julie's old clothes and underwear out of the bag, "the things in the bag have value only to me in my divorce proceedings." He looked at what I was pulling out of my bag and smiled. He was confident that he had made the best deal. "Are you sure you don't want to change?" I asked. He had both halves of the $50 bill so quickly that his hands were a blur. I drove home and arrived around the usual time. Julie couldn't meet my gaze. "I'm really sorry for what I did last night," she said. "I don't really remember getting into the car." "Julie, you've been forgetting a lot of things lately," I said. "Maybe you should check with a doctor." "Maybe I'm pregnant," she said. I looked worried. "Who are you sleeping with?" I asked. "Only with you, stupid," she smiled. "By the way, we haven't done anything for a long time, and I think our dry spell should end today. What do you think?" She came up to me and tried to kiss me. "Julie, you still smell like alcohol," I said. "I only had a couple of weak drinks," she said. "I've cut back a lot, and I will drive." "Well, I guess that's okay," I said, "but you need to be careful. We have enough problems as it is." A few minutes later, Julie's parents arrived. We spent a pleasant evening with them. Her father took me aside and quietly told me that Julie was drinking again. I pretended to be shocked. "She told me she was going to quit," I said with feigned surprise. "Let's not make a scene and embarrass her. She's been through a lot already. I'll talk to her after you leave. Let's not ruin the evening." What do you think of our first part of the story today? I feel sorry for the husband who caught his wife in a situation that you wouldn't wish on an enemy. What was your impression of the situation? Write in the comments. Until new videos.